Let's be honest, if you're a social researcher, the word philosophy can sound, well, a little intimidating, right? It feels so abstract, so disconnected from the real work of crunching data or conducting interviews. But what if it's actually the most practical tool in your entire toolkit? In this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain and demystify the key philosophical ideas that are hiding just beneath the surface of every single research project. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to tackle that skepticism head-on. Why even bother with this stuff? Then, we'll uncover the huge questions every researcher has to answer, whether they know it or not. We'll dive into the super tricky nature of causality, explore why the social world is way more like a cloud than a clock, and wrap it all up by reframing your role, from a simple researcher to a detective. All right, Section 1, why bother? This really is the big question, isn't it? If you're a hands-on researcher, you're busy, you've got studies to design, data to analyze, deadlines to meet, so why on earth should you hit pause and start thinking about abstract philosophy? This quote just nails it. It feels like asking a plumber to go get a PhD in hydrology. The plumber just wants to fix the leaky pipe. They don't need to understand the entire water cycle. But here's the thing. The argument is that without understanding at least a little bit of that underlying hydrology, you can never truly be a master of your craft. You'll just be fixing pipes, not understanding the system. And this is the most important point. The goal here is not to turn you into a capital P philosopher. It's about empowering you as a researcher. It's about getting rid of that anxiety that sometimes comes with theory and giving you a much deeper, more confident grasp on the choices you make every single day in your work. So, with that in mind, let's take a look at what's actually hiding just beneath the surface. It turns out that every single method we use, from a simple survey to a deep, immersive study, is built on a foundation of philosophical assumptions. We're making these big choices, often without even realizing it. Seriously, think about it. Every time you start a project, you're taking a stand on these huge issues. Objectivity. Are you trying to be a neutral observer, or is that a total fantasy? Quantity versus quality. Do you believe numbers tell the real story, or do you need personal narratives to get to the truth? And maybe the biggest one, what can we really know about another person's inner world? The methods you choose, those are your answers to these questions. Now, these big questions bring us to two key terms you hear all the time: epistemology and ontology. They sound complicated, but they're not. Epistemology is simply the how question. How do we know what we claim to know? Is it through observation, measurement, interpretation? And ontology is the what question. What is the actual nature of the social world we're looking at? Is society just a collection of individuals, or is it a web of invisible structures? Okay, this leads us to one of the biggest philosophical headaches in all of science, and that is causality. In our everyday lives, saying A caused B feels, well, obvious. But for a researcher, making that same claim is an absolute minefield. At its most basic, causality is just about what makes something happen. It's the engine of change. But a long time ago, a philosopher named David Hume came along and pointed out this huge problem with how we think we see it, a problem that researchers are still wrestling with today. And this billiard ball example illustrates the problem perfectly. So imagine you're watching. What do you actually see? You see ball A rolling. You see it make contact with ball B. And then you see ball B roll away. You never, ever see a thing called causation. You just see a sequence of events, and your brain helpfully fills in the gap by inferring a cause. For a researcher, that inference is the entire challenge. So how in the world do researchers deal with this? Well, they've developed a few clever workarounds. Some just give up on strict causality altogether and only talk about correlation or association. Others try to prove sufficiency, like they can show that flipping this specific switch was sufficient to turn on the light. An even harder goal is proving necessity, arguing that only flipping that switch could have done it. But honestly, most of the time, especially in social science, we work with probability. We can't prove that smoking causes cancer in every single person, but we sure can show that it dramatically raises the probability of it happening. Now, if you thought that was tricky, the challenge of causality gets even harder when you consider the very nature of the social world we're trying to study. Which brings us to our fourth section, the idea that society is not some neat, tidy machine. This distinction is so important. We tend to use the words complicated and complex as if they mean the same thing, but in the philosophy of science, they are worlds apart. A complicated system has a lot of parts, but it's ultimately predictable. A complex system is fundamentally, well, unpredictable. And realizing the social world is complex, not just complicated, changes absolutely everything. And I love this analogy. A jumbo jet is complicated. I mean, has millions of parts, but they all fit together in a fixed, predictable way. You can take it apart and put it back together again. But mayonnaise is complex. It's really just two main ingredients, oil and egg yolk, but a chemical process creates something totally new, an emulsion. And you can't unmake it. You can't get your oil and egg back. The whole has become something fundamentally different than the sum of its parts. The philosopher Karl Popper used a similar idea, contrasting clocks and clouds. Some systems in the world are like clocks. They're mechanical, stable, predictable. But many others, especially in the social world, things like economies, cultures, social movements, they're more like clouds. Their shape is real, you can see it, but it emerges, it shifts, it changes, it disappears. So ask yourself, the thing that you study, is it more like a clock or is it a cloud? So if we've established that we're often studying unpredictable clouds instead of these nice, tidy clocks, what does that actually mean for us? Well, that brings us to our final section. It means we need to reframe our job. We're not just technicians, we're detectives, armed with a philosophical toolkit. The great survey researcher Kathy Marsh just said it perfectly. Think about it. A lawyer starts with a conclusion, my client is innocent, and then works backward to find evidence to defend that position. But a detective? A detective starts with a puzzle and follows the evidence wherever it might lead, slowly piecing together a very complex story. That, right there, is our job. And that's the bottom line. Philosophy isn't some magic wand that gives you all the right answers. That's not the point. The point is that it sharpens your thinking. It gives you the tools to ask better, deeper questions. It helps you understand the limits and the possibilities of your own methods so you can navigate the messy, complex reality of the social world with a lot more skill and a lot more confidence. So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. As you go about your own work, or even just as you look at the world around you, get in a habit of asking yourself, what are the unseen complexities here? What are the cloud-like dynamics at play that are shaping the world I'm trying so hard to make sense of?